Did you ever discover that the people you trusted most were the ones who hurt you the deepest? My name is Elena Morales, and 4 years ago, I walked away from my family without saying goodbye. Today, I sat across from them again in a small cafe in San Diego, and for the first time in years, I finally told them the truth they never wanted to hear. When I stepped out of that cafe and into the quiet afternoon air, my hands were still shaking. Not because I was afraid, but because after years of silence, I had finally said everything that had lived inside my chest like a storm. But to understand why that moment mattered so much, you have to understand what happened 4 years earlier. It started with an email from my mother. The subject line was simple: "We need to talk." I stared at it in my inbox for 2 days. Just seeing her name made my stomach twist. For 4 years, I had avoided every message, every phone call, every attempt they made to reach me. I had built a new life far away from them, and opening that email felt like reopening a wound that had barely healed. But eventually, curiosity won. The message was short. My older brother Daniel had lost everything. His marriage had collapsed after an affair. His job at a financial firm had disappeared overnight. My father had recently undergone heart surgery, and my mother said she was exhausted trying to hold everything together. At the end of the email, she wrote, "Elena, we need you. Please come home and help us." Reading those words made my chest tighten, because the last time I needed them, they weren't there. 4 years earlier, my life looked very different. Back then, I was married to a man named Adrian. He was a firefighter, the kind of person who ran toward danger when everyone else ran away. I worked as a nurse at a hospital across town. We didn't have much money, but we had a quiet apartment, big dreams, and a baby on the way. We spent evenings planning the future. Adrian painted the spare bedroom a soft sky blue. He spent an entire weekend assembling a second-hand crib he found online. Every night he would rest his hand on my stomach and talk to our unborn child like he was already there. "This little one is going to have the strongest mom in the world," he would say. I believed him. Then one night, everything changed. It was raining heavily that evening. Adrian kissed me goodbye before leaving for his shift, promising he would be home in the morning. At around 10 o'clock, my phone rang. A number I didn't recognize. When I answered, a calm but heavy voice introduced himself as Chief Ramirez from Adrian's fire station. There had been an accident. A drunk driver had run a red light and struck Adrian's truck while he was responding to an emergency call. By the time I reached the hospital, they were already waiting for me. They led me into a small, quiet room. And that was where I saw him. Still. Pale. Gone. The man who had filled our tiny apartment with laughter was suddenly nothing more than a silent body on a hospital bed. I remember touching his hand and feeling how cold it was. I remember wanting to say something, anything, but the words never came. Then suddenly a sharp pain tore through my abdomen. The grief, the shock. It had triggered early labor. I was rushed to the maternity ward 6 weeks earlier than expected. In the middle of the chaos, contractions crashing over me like waves, I called my parents. My mother answered. Through tears, I told her everything. "Mom, Adrian is dead. I'm in labor. I need you here." There was silence on the line. Then I heard an airport announcement in the background. Her voice sounded calm, almost distracted. "Elena, we're at the airport with Daniel. He just got a promotion and we're leaving for a vacation in Greece. We've planned this for months. We can't cancel." For a moment, I thought I had misunderstood. But she continued talking about flights and hotels like it was nothing. In the moment I needed my family the most, they chose a vacation instead. Something inside me went completely quiet. I didn't scream. I didn't argue. I just hung up. A nurse named Carla noticed I was crying during the contractions. She stayed beside me the entire night, holding my hand as I gave birth to my son, Matteo. He was born tiny and fragile, and doctors had to place him in the neonatal intensive care unit for nearly 2 weeks. During those days, I sat beside his incubator alone. My parents never called. The only message I received was a cheerful text from my mother. "Hope everything is okay. Greece is beautiful this time of year." I saved that message. At the time, I didn't know why. But deep down, I felt like one day I might need to remember exactly how it felt. Adrian's funeral was held a week later. The church was filled with firefighters in uniform, neighbors, friends, and people Adrian had saved during his career. But my family's seats were empty. They were still on their vacation. That day, something inside me broke. After the funeral, I stopped answering their calls completely. I focused on surviving for Matteo. Adrian's life insurance helped me pay off my student loans and buy a small house outside the city. My elderly neighbor, Mrs. Alvarez, became like a grandmother to Matteo. Adrian's fire chief often stopped by with toys and stories about his father's bravery. Slowly, piece by piece, I built a life without my family in it. Therapy helped me understand something important. For years, I had been the one taking care of everyone else. When my mother injured her back, I had moved into their house and helped her recover. I skipped career opportunities, missed promotions, and sacrificed my own life to support them. But when tragedy struck me, they weren't there. So when my mother's email arrived 4 years later asking me to come home and help, the request felt almost surreal. Still, I agreed to meet them. That's how I ended up sitting across from them earlier today in that cafe. My mother looked elegant as always, wearing expensive jewelry. My father seemed older and tired. Daniel looked thinner, his eyes shadowed with regret. My mother spoke first. "Elena, you disappeared from our lives. We tried to contact you for years. We don't understand what we did wrong." For a moment, I said nothing. Then I reached into my bag and placed a folder on the table. Inside were screenshots. Proof. I showed them messages from years earlier, times when they asked me for help and I dropped everything to support them. Then I showed them the text message from Greece, the one sent while I was in labor and Adrian had just died. "You chose a vacation over your daughter who had just lost her husband," I said quietly. My father tried to interrupt. "That was years ago." I shook my head. Pain doesn't expire just because time passes. Daniel finally spoke, his voice low. "I'm sorry, Elena. I should have been there." I looked at him carefully. For the first time, I could see real regret in his eyes. But regret doesn't erase choices. "Sorry is a beginning," I said, "but it doesn't change what happened." My mother began crying. For most of my life, I would have comforted her, but not today. Today, I simply stood up. "I spent years giving everything to this family," I told them. "But love only works when it goes both ways." Then I walked out. And that's how I ended up sitting in my car afterward, breathing in the quiet and realizing something powerful. For the first time in years, I felt free. 2 weeks later, my mother sent a letter. It was full of explanations and excuses, but no real apology. I folded it and placed it in a drawer. because I didn't need it anymore. That Christmas, Mateo and I celebrated with the people who had truly stood beside us: Mrs. Alvarez, Chief Ramirez, and Carla, the nurse who helped deliver him. Mateo looked around the table and asked, "Mom, why don't we see Grandma and Grandpa?" I knelt beside him and smiled gently. "Some people are family because of blood," I told him. "But the real ones are the people who choose to stay when life gets hard." He thought about that for a moment. Then he said, "I like our family." I hugged him tightly. "So do I." Because I finally learned something important. Family isn't defined by who you were born to. It's defined by who shows up when your world falls apart. And sometimes the bravest thing you can do is walk away from the people who never showed up for you. If this story touched you, tell me in the comments. Do you believe family is defined by blood, or by the people who truly stand beside you when life gets difficult?